This is episode 57.
This is The Business of Architecture. Helping architects conquer the world. And here's your host, Enoch Sears.
Hello and welcome back, Architect Nation. This is Enoch Sears, and this is the Business of Architecture show, the show where we talk about running a great business so that we as architects can change the world and really make the world a better place through design. So the idea here is to empower us with the business tools we need so we're not worried about paying for the bills. We can learn from other successful entrepreneurs, architects, and consultants about how to run a great firm, increase profit, have more time and flexibility. So this show right now, this show is sponsored by the Business of Architecture Conference, which is going to be online only, happening in early October. So I encourage you to reserve your seats for that conference. It's going to be everything you ever wanted to know about starting a firm, developing your own projects, getting more time, freedom, and flexibility as an architect. Now today I'm really looking forward to our show. I have with me today, joining me, is Zeke Freeman, the owner and principal of Root Architecture and Development. And he's based out of Colorado. Zeke, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Zeke, tell us where you're at and tell us a little bit about what your firm does.
So, we're right in the heart of Denver. And I think I was telling you here earlier, Nick, I'm just outside of Denver. We just built a little home up in Indian Hills, so we can escape it once a day. And that's kind of our house kind of started to be the launching point for our new firm. We built our house about 2 years ago and started getting new clients that were asking us if we could kind of do the same thing for them. And so I've had a long background in architecture and have been doing that in Denver for the last 10, 15 years. And recently, with our new company, I've started doing design build. And so we're managing construction. We're doing architecture for single family and duplex type projects. And then we're also starting to do some of our own development, which was really the heart of the idea to kind of get out on our own. And so we're buying and fixing, flipping houses, and we've got some new scrapes that we're doing and some new single family kind of stuff.
And how long have you been on your own?
About 2 years, I guess in October. And it kind of was a slow transition. Like I said, I was working with firms here in Denver that were, primarily commercial. The last firm I was with was Ross Shepherd Architects, and we were doing working like the Denver Art Museum and some restaurants and that sort of thing. And I started to kind of transition with those guys. I came on just as a contract architect. I left my previous firm because I wanted to start getting out on my own, and had that opportunity to work with those guys on a contract base, which, was pretty upfront with them that I wanted to start my own firm. And they had some needs in some of their projects that allowed me to start working on those, but have a little bit longer leash to go after my own and kind of weave those in with the contract work I did for them.
How long did you do that contract work for?
So I guess the 2 year, start of my firm kind of benchmark probably overlapped a year with them. And so I worked with them for about a year. And so about 2 or 3 months of that, was just doing contract, and then started my own projects once I was in there for 2 or 3 months. And then this last year, I wrapped up the things I was doing with them and kind of had enough of our own projects going at that point that, we parted ways and I subleased over in a different area of town at another spot so we could brought on another construction manager, and we needed a little bit more room.
So it sounds like a good way to deal with the cash flow crunch that happens when you start a firm.
For us, it was critical. I knew we didn't have a lot of cash. I had a couple other projects that, everything was sunk into our house. Everything was kind of sunk into that. We were building that at the time, and I needed to make sure I could have cash flow. And when I came on with those guys, I left a pretty steady job. So even going contract was pretty nerve-wracking for me. And I, sat down with them and put together a 6-month contract. So I at least had a chunk of work that I knew I wasn't, completely cutting off the umbilical cord at once. And then just went real aggressive, 80-hour a week kind of things to, build our website, go and reach out to the, network we already had, let them know what we were doing. And, I thought at the time I had projects that were already kind of in the, in the food chain here that were going to start flowing through. And they did, but they took a lot longer. So it was really good to have a good, contract base of work to kind of sustain us for a while those projects that were in the cooker really, got some meat underneath them and started going forward.
So it sounds like a little bit more than a year of overlap when you were doing the contract work, and then about a year since then of flying 100% solo.
Yeah.
That's a good time frame. And then working for other architects, previous to that, kind of how much time did you have since you've been out of school?
Okay. So I worked all the way through school. I went to UTA in Texas for my undergrad, and then came up here to Colorado and started working with Oz Architects. I guess that would have been like 04, 03, something like that. And worked with them through college, graduated 06, 07-ish. And then worked with Bennett Wagner Grody for 3 or 4 years, and then did the contract bit with Ross Shepard, and then started our own. So I don't know, I have to do the math there, but something like 10 years-ish. And then prior to that was doing construction and, other kind of pieces.
Okay. So how would you characterize your firm right now in terms of, I know the title of your firm says architecture and development. Tell me more about the kind of the projects you really want to focus on right now, or that you are focusing on.
Yeah. So, I started my firm because we really did want to, go after developments, both because that's, kind of my passion. I'd like to have control of the project, to be able to, deliver all pieces, the construction, the architecture, and the end project, and have say in those. Because I think we can do really quality projects as an architect doing that, and have a little bit better cash flow and control of those pieces. How I kind of started getting into these is I was looking at a model in downtown Denver, fairly common, around some of the core areas, that you can take a single family lot, like a U2U, two unit zone lot, and divide those up into two zone lots, and you can put a higher end duplex. And the time I was looking at was probably 07, and I put together a full design for it. We put a property under contract, under option. So we had at least a piece of land that we could kind of base the project on.
And when you say we put a piece of project or a piece of land under option, who is we? So,
I had a real estate agent, that was working for me, kind of finding properties. And then my wife and I, our cash would be what was in the deal. And so, the idea at that time was, it's just purely speculative, putting together a development. And, I didn't have all I'd never done development before. I didn't have all the cash to do a project, but I had a pretty good network. And so the idea was I was going to put this project together and go find investors to put into it. And so I kind of followed a little bit of the Jonathan Siegelmark, plan, and met with some other developers. Sprocket's a large one here in town, and got some input on how to kind of package those investment options out.
That's interesting. So Zeke, you say that first going back, how much was the option that you put down? How much was the purchase price of the land, and how much was the option that you put down on it?
So I just put a contract on the land that we wanted a 30-day look. And so we had a free option on it, basically, 30-day look. And then, the land was, at that time, I think $275, which would have been really cheap for the same type of model that we're doing now. And then I took and, designed up the project. I bid it out to 3 other contractors, so I had some real numbers on what the duplex would cost to build. And then I put together a pro forma, showed a trickle-down model that would distribute out the profit at the end of the project based on the percentage of cash needed. We were going to try to finance it and raise 25% capital on it. And so put together a pro forma offering. So it was 08 maybe.
Roughly? Okay.
Probably a little later than that, maybe 09. So the market was still not like, hot and bumping.
So did you have a full-time job at this time?
I had a full-time job. And so, doing any kind of project on the side is a lot of effort. And so we went ahead and put together a full construction document while I had a full other, job going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just spent every lunch and waking minute, going and soliciting investors. And, this was early. And so I didn't get any real, hits in this. And so, it was a lot of effort for no, like at that time felt like, no real results. Looking back, I can see I would never have invested in that either into a kid who hadn't done a similar size project. And,
okay, why not?
And the market wasn't.
Why not?
Well, I think the 2 biggest portions were, people want to see one, that person has experience doing that almost exact project. And so if you can lower their risk, by experience, that helps. I had experience in the architecture side, but hadn't developed a project before of that scale. The other is people want to see, that you've got a good amount of skin in the game. At that time, I didn't have enough skin to put into the game in terms of cash. We were trying to put maybe 15 or 20,000, and we were looking to raise probably, 200,000. And so, most investors will want to see more skin into the game on something like that. And I think the biggest is just the market wasn't there yet. So these same units that I was looking at pitching at that time, were selling around like the 550 to 575 mark. And so, the back end on that was, about 18%. I mean, you might make 100,000, 150,000 on a deal like that you're, by the time you buy 300,000 in land, 550 to 600,000 in construction costs, you're at 800, and then you've got another, 100 probably in soft and sales costs. And so you're at $1 million, and you might be coming out at, $1.1 million, by the time you sold one of these. And so that margin was still pretty skim. So anyways, those didn't go. A lot of disappointment on that.
So I do have one question. Do you mind digging into that a little bit more, Zeke?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you said that you went to other developers to maybe develop some of the financial package that you were putting together.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about that process? Like what made you think, are these guys potential competitors, or how does that work in the development world?
So, I went to several people. So, went to developers that had both been friends and mentors in the past, just to get advice on how to properly put together these packages. One of those developers is also a builder. And so that guy, actually bid out the project. They do design, basically what I do now, design, build, and development. And so, he was looking at it as potential, construction end. And so he was very helpful on inputting on how to actually properly put this thing together so it could go and he get, opportunity to get into it. I went to other developers that, later turned into clients, that, were familiar with the project. Did this kind of investment, and I was basically looking to see what what kind of collaborative opportunities you might have. So either, I pitched opportunities to those guys that, we could run the construction and architecture. At that time we were pretty open to whatever you guys could come to the table with. Or you could just invest in it and, we'd run the other pieces. So those, and then I reached out to other guys that were, just purely small kind of friends and family groups of, can we put together, 4 piles of 30,000, kind of smaller packages. So yeah, that was kind of pretty much across the board, depending on who you're talking to at the other side of the table.
Hey, Architect Nation, I just wanted to interject a little editorial comment here. The next 7 minutes or so are pretty thick in numbers that might be kind of dry listening to, but as always, I want to bring you the information that will allow you to replicate the success of the guests on the show. And so I think that this will be valuable for those who are actually thinking about developing projects or currently going through this process. If you're not interested in that, I encourage you to go ahead and fast forward about 7 minutes to cut through all the meat of the numbers that we're talking about here. And the pro forma that we're talking about, it is available on Business of Architecture. Make sure you're logged into your account. If you don't have an account, you can get one by clicking the green Join Now button or Join Today button in the upper right-hand corner of the site, and you will have access to both the transcript of this episode as well as the pro forma that Zeke and I are reviewing for his first project.
Percentage here, Lance, about 275 to 300,000.
And are banks at this time, were banks accepting land banking? Were they accepting that as equity in the project?
Yeah, they will. If you have if you own the land outright, they'll look at that the same as equity. And also, depending on the bank, like I've got a hard money lender that will look at architecture fees as equity as well. So if you've done a full set of construction documents, some of those will actually accept those as equity as well. Loan required, $792,000. That would be 75%. We were looking at 6.5% interest rates at the time. So we got some origination fees. Target sales price at $1.1 million, basically. Target sales per unit, 577,000. So I had a break even, is your 1.1, which would be 560. So we needed to be, at least in that 575 range per unit. And let's see, we had a deferred design fees of $30,000. So this is where we were looking at putting the architecture into the project. And then development fees of $20,000. So that was part of the soft cost. And so with the deferred design fees, and like I was saying here, that brought our capital requirement down from $264,000 to $234,000. Which is about a 17% return on investment at the time.
Okay. And where does that 17% come from again?
The anticipated gross profit of $41,000 with the capital requirement of $264,000. See if that pencils out.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Let's see. Well, I'm just doing the math now. Yeah, that's a 15%.
Okay.
15% profit on, and that 264. Did that include your? You come up with that number after subtracting out the deferred architecture fees and the development fee?
In terms of cash in, after the capital required included the architecture fees in there. So we said we were going to put those into the project, lower our capital requirement down to 234.
Okay, 234. Right. Okay. All right, now Zeke, looking at this and the numbers at this first project when you first did this, how does this look to you now, knowing what you know and doing these things for real now?
Well, it was probably accurate at the time, or not too far off. What's happened recently in the market is, these price per, we're in starting to be a little bit of a rising market in Denver. And so, it's made it feasible, to really get these things done. So when we're looking at 575, we're looking at least 650. Some of the things I think that's helped, this set of plans at the time, was actually we've been able to get a little bit more square footage into them, by, just maxing it. I think this plan didn't have the lot quite maxed out. We've got a full finished basement and rooftop, units in these things as well.
And the ones you're doing now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And so now with the projects that you're doing, Zeke, how does the financial structure work in terms of getting investors on board? How do you pitch that to them?
So for this exact duplex model, I think I said we didn't get investors on at the time. There was a couple year gap, and then some of the investors that we had pitched to came back with they had land under contract, or they owned land essentially, and they had remembered us when we were pitching this thing, and asked us to come in and see if we could manage the construction or do the design. So we've got two of them now that have gone up with two separate developers that kind of came through this process. And so the way that they're structuring is similar to how I, had pitched before. But those projects turned into either architecture, or construction projects. Go back to your original question here.
It was just the financial structuring of it. If you could just lay that out again in terms of if I'm going to be pitching an investor and I put together my package, obviously a large part of the success of pitching it is what's in it for the investor. How do I structure his return on investment or her return on investment? I'm asking for money.
So the projects that we've got now that are that we've got some investors in on have been a little bit more straightforward. Like a 15% return. So, for example, we've got a pop top that we're doing that we used a private lender on, financed all that ourselves, and we needed about $15,000. And so we went to a friend and family, borrowed the $15,000, and just did a more simple 15% interest. And so we'll pay that just a straight interest at the end of the project. And so getting the cash has been a little bit easier and not as complicated as it was at the time.
Okay. So that one that requires $15,000, is that because the land is already part of the deal?
So this is 4974 Quitman. It's up on our website. The way that one worked is it was a short sale. We put the property, we bought the property quickly with hard money. Put together
When you say hard money, can you define that for me, Zeke?
So it's a private lender that charges like 15% interest and 2 points to close on the property. So we bought it with one hard money lender, and we had a good enough buy on the property. It was about $130,000, probably something that was worth in its current state, just for land, about $175,000. So we had enough that it made sense to do that. It cost us about, the first close, we had to close quickly on it. We had 2 days to close on the deal. By the time the bank gave us actual approval. So we knew we were interested in this project. We had been talking with the bank and submitted an offer a long time. When they finally gave us the approval, it was right up to the point where they were going to actually be going into foreclosure and said, you can have it if you can close in 2 days. So we went to a hard money lender that could close quickly on it. Is the reason why we kind of went down that path, and the numbers made sense enough for us to go ahead and do that. And so we bought it with the hard money. It ended up costing us about $7,000 with points. We put together a set of construction documents, submitted it in for permit. About a 4 to 6 week permit process. Put together that quick set, took about a week to put together. Ended up being pretty much a full house. We kept everything, we demoed everything except for one wall in the front of the house and a little bit of the foundation. So while it was in for permit, and we bid it out to our subcontractors, got our numbers together on, what the construction costs were going to be, we were able to then refinance with the construction loan, which is another private lender who will do construction and land costs. So we packaged all those up into one, and we needed about the $30,000 is what I think it was $30,000 total for that construction and land cost is what we needed in capital. So we put 15 in, and then had a friend and family put in 15. Then we've taken that and we're building that house now.
Okay. Now, are the banks looking at a personal guarantee, or how does the guarantee work on these loans?
So that is again the refinance with the construction and the land is another private lender. He's got a little bit lower fees, about 12%. He's got a 1.5 closing fee, and then it's a 6-month construction loan with a 6-month extension. There's a fee if you have to extend it past the 6 months. And so when he's lending on it, he's looking at the ratios of the cost to after repair value. And so if our total cost, I think he has a ratio of 80%. I think 90% is what he'll lend on for the after repair value is what he'll lend for the total construction and land cost. And so we put together a package that was, by the time he had it in his hand, it was basically a full construction document set, full set of comps on what things are going for in the area, and then a bid out, hard cost estimate. And so it takes a little time to get those pieces together. So that in between stage and the double close is, costs a little bit extra, but if you're going in with little cash down, gives a little bit of time to get that information together.
So does that mean that there's no personal guarantee on that loan?
There is a personal guarantee on the loan. Yeah, absolutely. So we sign off on it personally. So
they're looking at your cash flow as a business.
They look at your cash flow as a business. They look at, what you have in, assets, home equity, all those things.
Yep. Is it a problem that you've only had your business for 2 years in terms of lenders looking at the stability of your cash flow?
If you're going to a traditional bank, it will be, but that's where going to these private lenders or hard money lenders makes some sense.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, Zeke, thanks for taking us through that journey. A lot of nitty gritty there in terms of what it takes to get a project done. But these are things that it's hard to look this information up and find it. So it's good for our audience members that are thinking about going down this road to listen to it and hear about what it took for you to put together these packages.
So I'd say one other, if you're looking to start, our house was a simpler deal. And that one's probably worth chatting about a little bit. A little less risk appetite than doing your own personal residence, but it's a good starter to learn, what the construction and, what the cash is. So we did several that were our own home.
That sounds like an excellent segue into the second segment. So how about we save that and for our second segment? Zeke?
All right.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the show today.
I appreciate the opportunity, Enoch.
All right.
Pleasure talking with you.
Me too. And that's a wrap. Thanks for riding along on another show about the business of architecture. I want to know your opinion about today's episode. Visit businessofarchitecture.com/podcast or send me an email at show@businessofarchitecture.com with your feedback about today's show. And remember, visit businessofarchitecture.com/free to grab your free membership pass to Business of Architecture Insider, where you'll have first access to free resources to help you run a great business. See you next week.
Everybody knows that you just gotta do it anyway.
The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you run a great business. But music credit to Ben Folds 5. Do it anyway.